Well, hello there, guys, and welcome to the Post Film Podcast. My name's Mikey.
My name's Ken.
And we have just been to see Denis Villeneuve's Dune and pop straight into the car straight afterwards to give you our spoiler-free thoughts for a quick moment, and then we'll give you a big warning and tell you when we're going to talk about what happens in the film, and then dive in from there. We haven't really discussed anything so far except for one quip, which I will repeat right now.
Right, go on.
Which is one of the things I love about Denis Villeneuve is he's not afraid to take his time. But today, he took mine. Excellent.
And mine.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Well, actually, so straight off the bat, I just got to say, I actually really love that film. I thought it was great. There's a very particular nature to Dune and what expectations you have. And it's not maybe standard movie expectations.
Right. So, structurally, where I thought we would go with this, right? Because you're coming in as a Dune fan. Mm-hmm. I'm coming in with practically no knowledge. I mean, what I'm not going to do this time is I'm not going to do my, hey, Dune, that really shit book that you love kind of thing. I'm not going to do that. It's
time. You've been doing that for like 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's beginning to wear out its welcome now. It might have a resurgence at some point, but I think for this we can avoid that.
You're the man that loves to hate.
Yeah. I'm the man that loves to be sort of ironically objectionable to everything except that which I deem to be worthy.
Jesus. Okay. Yes, question mark.
Yes.
So, what were your initial just core reactions then to the film? Bear in mind, this is Dune Part 1, so the book has been split in half. This goes right up to a kind of cut-off in the book called The Prophet, I think.
Right. Okay.
Because I think the book was originally released in like 3 parts long ago. It kind of splits really weirdly.
Oh, so we're talking like a Lord of the Rings thing?
Not quite. But,
well, because Lord of the Rings was originally one book, but in terms of like, I think they were going through a paper shortage or something like that. And so in order to sustain it, in terms of sustaining production, the thing to do was to split it into 3 parts. Oh. It was not originally supposed to be 3 parts.
Yo, because I've got a copy of Lord of the Rings, and it is a 6-part book set.
Wow.
Where there's 3 like A and Bs, so to speak.
How do you? So what is that? The Silmarillion? Did I say a word there?
Yeah, but like I'm glad you're involved.
Yeah.
So it's got the Fellowship, Part 1, Part 2, and then
so it splits each book into 2 parts.
Yeah.
Fuck me.
And I think that might also be something to do with serialized production, because I think Dune may have been actually released. And now, don't hold a gun to my head on this one, but like it might be released chapter by chapter for a bit, and then released as 3 separate short stories.
I believe it was to do with paper shortages, because it was not long following the Second World War when things were not in abundance, and so they balked at the idea of 1,000 pages, all at once.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So,
long story short, the movie is half of the first book. What were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, but and it's not a spoiler to say this, but it says that right up. It's been promoted as, and this is I've discovered
Dune
this is
Part 1 is on the titles as you watch in the cinema.
This is a very difficult word for me to say. Dune. Dune.
I just go D-O-O-N. Dune.
Yeah, Dune. Dune.
Oh, okay. Really
Dune.
Quick heads up. This is one of my first initial impressions.
Okay.
If you're going to land on a brand new planet where the locals might be hostile to you, and you need to prove yourself to be a welcoming force, don't lead with the bagpipes.
Right.
Don't open your act on planet.
I'm gonna say that bit took me out of it because I went, I recognise that element. Why would they have that? No.
Because it's year 10,191, it's feudal lineage.
Right. Well, so, basically, my very, very brief thoughts, because we'll get into this in detail.
Yeah, but still spoiler-free.
I'm kind of... I'm not on the fence, but I'm also not engaged. I did like what I saw, but I didn't love what I saw. I think is the best way to put it. What I thought we could do, like, just for context, because it's always good to give a bit of context. I think, first of all, if you tell me how you came to this, why do you love it going into it?
Oh, okay.
Because I'm coming in with no knowledge of it. The only knowledge I have is the brief mentions,
sure.
that you've given it.
Well, I'll give you my Cliff Notes version of that, and then hopefully...
Cliff Notes would be good, because we don't want this to go 3 hours.
And then hopefully build a kind of like... So what you're not going to get, and what you're probably not really going to expect if you've been reading Dune, is a traditional movie that's going to wrap up, or necessarily the first half of what feels like a traditional movie narrative.
Yeah.
You've got the main crux. The characters are built and then they get into trouble.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say it very much feels like a part one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that is to its detriment a little bit.
We'll get specific on the script. So you have watched the David Lynch version. Something we were talking about that.
I have watched the David Lynch version, yeah.
That is not necessarily a great movie. I personally love it for personal reasons, but it's the first half is stronger than the second.
I will agree with that. I mean, I was impressed with certain elements of it. I think the production design is in parts incredible. And then you get the meeting with the first introduction of the Baron, Harkonnen, I want to say.
Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, yeah, good.
Okay. Oh, nearly there. His introduction is just in a green room. And it's like, did you run out of money at this point?
No.
Because it looks like one that they forgot to dress.
Because you've just got the entire focus. So basically, one of the things I love about Dune is that it's very much your kind of like a sort of hero's journey, but everything kind of makes way more sense. You've got this whole white messiah landing on a planet and then needing to co-op the locals, except the very concept of that is part of the narrative that's been put in place by the Bene Gesserit.
Right.
We're going to kind of go through the film step by step, and I'll probably dip in and out of like book references.
Yeah. How did you first come to it? Was it as a film or was it as a book?
As a film, actually. I was aware that the book existed. Had no idea what I was looking at. I was too young to read it at the time.
Yeah.
And then I came across the 1984 David Lynch and just loved its weirdness. Almost like, do you know how like there's those really sick, disgusting people who love the Rocky Horror Picture Show and they watch it again and again? It's kind of like that.
I have never been able to make up my mind about that film. I have been in the closet.
Oh, wow, okay. So we're learning a lot today.
In regards to musicals, I have loved every musical I've ever seen, but I've constantly said, oh God, don't show me a musical. I don't want to see a musical, right? And I came to the Rocky Horror Picture Show because everybody goes on about the fucking Rocky Horror Picture Show, right?
Mate, when that thing's on, all the tattoo parlours are empty.
And the pubs are full.
Yeah, no one's picking up their pain meds on that day.
Right. Yeah, but I really liked the music. I thought the songs were fantastic, right? And obviously it's packed with great personalities.
Yeah, it's got bangers. Yeah.
But in terms of actors, it's like, it's Susan Sarandon, it's Richard O'Brien, it's fucking Tim Curry. You know, it's like heavy hitters. In terms of personality, you go, I know him and I know what to expect from him. But I think I can never make up my mind whether that film is just weird or whether it's deliberately designed to be cult. To appeal to a
manufactured cultism.
Very, very niche fan base. Even though, if he had his way, Richard O'Brien would have whored the shit out of that. Because, it's been a stage thing, it's been a film. They did a sequel that nobody's heard of.
So
called Shock Treatment.
Does that keep you tentatively away from committing to liking it?
It does, yeah, because I'm like, you didn't design it for me to like this. Why should I buy into this? But then I'm kind of going, well, maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me being cynical. And I can never really, nail what I think about it.
That happens a lot, but you've got to never really doubt your gut reaction.
Yeah, and I think my visceral reaction is, you never intended for anybody to watch this, even though if there was the chance of making a hell of a lot of money out of it, you would do it.
Okay.
Incredibly cynical product, but not worthless as an entity at all. It definitely has some merit, and I love the music, but that's. Sorry, we got into a whole thing
this is a fascinating divergence.
As opposed to every other divergence we ever make.
How does this relate to 1984 Dune?
Yeah, how does it? Because you started making that point, and I.
No, you're the one who's telling us a fascinating insight to your coming out story.
Okay, so I'm gay.
Okay, thanks. Good to know. You were just like, look,
End of the podcast.
I'm not into men, but maybe I'm just being cynical. You've just finally come around to it.
I wasn't into men until Robert Downey Jr. started banging the shit out of that iron helmet, and then I was like, okay.
You're just fair, and you're just like, is my attraction to women just a cynical reaction? Is that what I am? Is that what I've become? Understandable. So I got into the 1984 David Lynch one because, I liked its weirdness very much.
but it's very anti-Lynch weird, is what I was trying to say to you. It's like the way that when he's on point, and I can kind of see little things that would lead into what the next thing would be, which was Blue Velvet, which is an incredible film. I saw that in my first weekend of university. I'd never seen it before, and I went, like my mind just got blown open in terms of what cinema is.
Oh wow! Because I don't know that film off the top of my head.
Oh shit! I mean, you've seen it, right?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
Wow!
There's like I think 3 different David Lynch films where there's a lot of women who look really similar, and it's very dreamlike. And
yes.
I'm just like,
so that's
sure. And maybe someone has a car crash, and I'm just like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. You're not gonna. Okay, no. I thought you were going to lead into that thing where you get crash confused. Right.
No.
Oh, okay. I was waiting for you to head down that dark alley. No, Blue Velvet. I think maybe visually and sensorially might get that muddled up with Mulholland Drive.
Maybe, yeah.
But Blue Velvet is incredible because before I went to university, was a multiplex guy. You know, I see whatever's on. Blue Velvet is an old film. It's like, why would I go and watch that? But then you start falling in line with people like, oh, you know, you like cinema, you got to see this. And honestly, it was like just a complete trip in terms of what sound could do, in terms of what visuals could do, in terms of how you could construct atmosphere out of nothing. And he can make a room look fucking terrifying with nothing in it, basically, except some like pretty standard furniture. The weirdness of the 1984 Dune is totally at odds with what you would expect of him and what he would normally deliver on. And I think it's one of those things, it's like, I forget that he did it, basically. So, it would be easy to write that off as just someone else.
I came to this on VHS long before I even knew to think things like, oh, certain directors have a certain style across different genres.
Yeah.
I thought there was space
sure.
films, horror films, fantasy films. Like, that's how I understood movies back then. James Bond movies, yeah. But so I just liked it for what it was and just took it at face value. So all the whispering commentaries that all the characters have.
Yeah.
Gurney Halleck, my boy Patrick Stewart helped me kind of buy into that.
Yeah.
Jürgen Prochnow, I had actually just done like a Das Boot marathon at some point for no reason as a young kid.
Are we talking like the TV version?
Whichever one is like you have to watch it on 3 separate Sundays.
Yes.
Like it's a real long thing.
That's it. Yeah.
So I'd always loved that, and then separately, like when I was at university, I was just talking to one of my housemates' mates, and he was like, "Oh, yo, if you think this book's really good, then if you think this film's really good, you should read the book. You're really going to love it."
Right.
And so I took to the book about halfway through university, and I was mad in love with it.
Yeah.
And it's just wild, and it's so it's very much like this long kind of idea of like. The scene of the overall part of the book is set right in the beginning, what it is to be human, what it is to have self-restraint, and what it is to get the ball rolling on something that's so much bigger than yourself that you're going to lose control of it. And the overarching, and this isn't really a spoiler, but the overarching main concern across the first 2 or 3 books is the nature of a massive jihad spanning across the galaxies.
Can I ask, before you came to this book, had you, because you, I think in a previous podcast had mentioned that you had basically gone through most of, if not all of the major religious texts at some point in your life, right? Yeah,
read all the big bangers.
Yeah. Did you read those before you came to Dune?
No, Dune was before.
Okay, because because I've never delved into this I've never delved into theology. And I would struggle to read any religious interpretation into a film like that or a text like that.
It's not as big as you need to worry about. It's mostly just the whole Messiah thing,
right? That's which that is very it's very base. That's very obvious.
Yeah. So in the world of Dune, like Catholicism and Protestantism exists or survived in the form of the Orange Catholic Bible, which is weird Catholic orange men squeezed into a religious text in the future sort of thing.
Yeah.
And Gurney Halleck quotes from it all the time.
Okay.
Dr. Yue in the books has a copy where he gives it to Paul, and there's a lot of like quoting from that sort of thing.
Okay.
But really, it's not that. It's you don't need to have a familiarity with other religious texts.
Right.
To kind of read into
Okay.
It really is just being aware of the whole white Messiah thing, and that's more of just a film trope. So all that kind of background, none of that's necessary to get more out of it.
It's just like if you've got that knowledge, it might just add an extra layer to it or something.
I wouldn't say too much. Like to say that would be to remove the accessibility of book, and it's not inaccessible completely.
Well, it reminds me of my first girlfriend.
Completely inaccessible.
Cold and impenetrable. Yeah, that's it's just
holy shit.
Which is why I'm not coming out.
Okay, good to know.
I've unpacked a lot of trauma in that last 2.5 hours.
Wow. Okay. Well, you need to be doing something because it's not like you're going to pay attention.
No.
So.
Wow.
No. I'm literally.
That's a deep cut,
I get this
That's
off
a
my
deep
chest
cut.
because I actually did really enjoy this for what it needed to be.
Yeah.
So anyway, what I'm getting at is like you asking me about all this background stuff. It's actually useless and a waste of time compared to this film.
Okay.
Don't worry about that.
Okay.
It's not going to change your meta.
Which is fine. I was
The
more
book, yes,
interested.
A background awareness on religion. No. Just
okay.
the book.
No, I was more interested in actually what formed your emotional attachment to it before we came to tonight, basically.
Oh, okay. Well, lovely.
And that was you got introduced to it because I don't think, weirdly, maybe it's because I've been so ironically dismissive of it before, but I don't think we've ever had the conversation about how the hell did you come to even love this in the first place.
Don't worry about that. It's just to understand it's one of the most important science fiction books ever written. It's really, really good.
Okay. That's fair.
Basically, you're not going to get this kind of super fun arc. It's the breakdown of one feudal house. It's all wizards and witches, and it just happens to be in the future. That's all it is. So you've got the horrible breakdown of one feudal household, and then the kid having to co-opt the locals of this new environment to then take his revenge and, rethrone his rightful place in the memory of his father.
Yeah.
That is the essence of it. In order to get the ball rolling and the ball going fast enough to gain enough power to do that, means that once he gets where we want to be at the end of book 1, at the end of part 2, ideally, of another Denis Villeneuve film, the ball's rolling fast enough at that point that you then can't really stop it. In order for him to get what he needs at the end of book 1, you've got 2 more books of how that kind of goes a bit out of control.
I made a filmic comparison that Mikey didn't he didn't really appreciate. Remember the Chronicles of Riddick?
Oh yeah. It's kind of like that.
Well, look, the only way. I mean, I'm just a simple-minded jock trying to make it through the day without raping a sheep, and the only thing that the only way I can make sense of anything is to link it filmically to something else. So that was how I was like, oh, I know what you're talking about now because I've seen.
So no, nothing like that.
Because I've seen like Vin Diesel, take on the Army of the Dead.
So getting back to the movie,
please.
Like what you're going to get is it's going to be a bit more about just setting up this whole kind of scene, and the gravitas of it is Paul's awareness. Like the main kind of thing for his character is going to be the level of awareness he's got, and how much that grows. The main kind of things you're going to get from Jessica are her dealing with this kind of split thing where she's got her love for her Duke and she's got her duty as a Bene Gesserit, and how she then basically fights tooth and nail to keep her son alive, which is probably going to be a bit more in the next movie. And then obviously you've got like Duncan Idaho needs to be in it for a bit, but then he comes back much later in this very odd other kind of thing, whereas the film's going to lean a bit more on him because he's a big famous actor. And in terms of the Duke, you've got his weird lament where he's aware that things might not go well and it's stacked against him. And he's always got this overshadowed relationship with the old Duke, which is really interesting because they had a lot of that in there. And then you've just got the other ones. The Beast Raban is an angry madman. The Emperor we haven't seen anything of yet, which is fascinating. And that's it. Like
he was introduced very early in the Lynch one.
Yeah, but in the books, to be fair, he probably doesn't turn up until right at the end.
Right.
So, like, there's not too much to worry about from the text to the movie, but I'm very much a hardcore Dune fan from the text. So what I was actually coming in from was more expectations about Villeneuve doing this hopefully right based on his previous work filmically, more than the book.
Which, for a bit of context, I also want to talk about, because we went to see Arrival together. Somebody brought that up in the chat the other night. And I remember coming out of that we had a very different experience from each other with that film.
Did we?
Yeah, it was always keeping me at a distance. And I think you got a hell of a lot more out of it than me, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I definitely loved it coming out to cinema.
Visually, it looked great, but it was... I think I said to you at the time, his stuff that I've seen, apart from maybe Sicario, which was very sort of ground level, intense, followed one particular character on a journey and felt like it was buying into her. Everything else that I've seen of his, including Blade Runner 2049, actually, just has this feel. It's the way people describe Stanley Kubrick when you don't know Stanley Kubrick.
Can you elaborate?
People describe Stanley Kubrick as a cold filmmaker. And that is a very baseline accusation that people who don't really pay attention to Stanley Kubrick make. It's because he does long takes. It's because he does very wide shots. There's a lot of space between, actors are separated by huge gulfs of space. They look very tiny comparative to everything else. They're kind of dwarfed by everything else. And I think that makes him come across to people who are not, and I don't want to get snobbish about it, but people who maybe don't read into it as much as I do, having studied it, quite, offhandedly pass him off as a cold filmmaker. He's not interested in humans. He's interested in everything else. But I don't think anybody could watch something like Full Metal Jacket or Barry Lyndon and say that he's not interested in the human, or 2001 even, to be honest, which is a very humane film. But I think it's because visually it just reads as cold because there's distance and because there's huge amounts of space, and I think it's bullshit. I think it's for people who watch The Shining and don't watch another Kubrick film, basically. And I could definitely see that leveled at The Shining, but not so much as other stuff. And it's weird. But this, visually, Villeneuve reflects to me the way people perceive Stanley Kubrick. I get that vibe from Villeneuve. He feels cold.
Now you're the people.
Now I'm the people. Okay, does that mean I get what I want now?
No. The people have never come read history. So so is it the way that because what I expected from Villeneuve for this film was something where he's always going to take that time. So I think I get what you mean, and I think he uses something else in place of that.
Do you remember?
Maybe not effectively.
There were brief moments in Arrival where it's got this incredibly warm, intimate lighting, almost like you would get in an indie, an early 2000s indie production, right? And there was those brief moments where I went, oh, maybe? And then it would cut back to a big landscape shot, and it's not that his films lack colour, but the colour... And we're not talking like Zack Snyder. We're not talking full desaturation to the point where I actually want to kill. But but it's just everything's a little bit just washed out. And I think that removes any sense of engagement or intimacy for me. To the point where I'm sitting watching it sort of passively without getting involved in what's happening. It's weird.
I noticed the trailer was a lot brighter and a lot dialed up on the white levels.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
So I think in terms of Villeneuve's kind of approach to that, from what I kind of remember, is some of what I was expecting out of this film. In that I wanted him to take his time. I wanted him to have just lots of big shots where there might be and just talking about a visual landscape in all of the key shots.
Yeah.
Not much, but the things that were there make big shapes. There'll just be a couple big ships in the background.
Yeah.
Shitloads of space, a Fopter. Shitloads of space, the Baron sitting in a kind of wedge-shaped chair.
Yeah.
All of it's kind of sitting very spatially arranged. So that's kind of very, in my head at least, very tropey of the 70s sci-fi. and a lot of the artworks, like you
Yeah.
get painted, you get like all those people taking LSD in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And they become sci-fi book cover artists
Yeah.
in the 70s.
That's it. No, I said to you when we were talking about the 1984 one, it's like, if this had been made in the 70s, it might have been a stronger film. Now, I don't know if I articulated that well, but what I meant by that is that the 70s to me, and I particularly mentioned horror, but if you look at I think that the late 60s through the 70s is basically the greatest period for American cinema ever. You have, year after year, it's like an embarrassment of fucking riches. You have just these ironclad fucking classics that are coming out year after year after year. Hit. And it was when they were making things with prestige. They were making things to be memorable. The 80s was when there was a lot more cocaine flying about. And everything, literally everything was to excess.
All the script pages are covered in cocaine dust.
It's like, why is horror such a disregarded genre? And the answer is the 80s. Right? When you get Friday the 13th, part 10, you go, this is a lot of shit, isn't it? And there's a particular example, but we're not talking about horror. I just want to contextualize it a little bit. And I think I could look at certain elements of the 1984 one and go, that's great. I think there's definitely been money spent here. They do care to a certain degree. But then you've got really strange stuff. And it did trigger me during one particular bit in the film, because all I could think about was that same bit in the 1984 one, which was unintentionally hilarious to me, and we'll cover that when we get into spoilers.
Okay.
But then you got like Sting, looking really sweaty just in his pants, and the Baron going,
yeah, lovely face.
Right? You wouldn't get that in the previous decade, that is an 80s moment for me.
Okay.
Is the best way I could put it.
But like, obviously, Jodorowsky's attempt to make it in the 70s was a wild mess.
Which I don't know anything about, except that I know Dan O'Bannon was on it, if I remember correctly. I know Giger was on it.
Yep.
And that's it. But when I consider that, I go, now what if they'd made Dune, in the 70s the way they made Alien?
Right, okay. Because that's obviously nothing like what Jodorowsky was going
with
for.
That kind of craft, that kind of just, I need to get this made. There's a certain vibe running through 70s American cinema, which is just, my God, I need to get this story on the fucking screen, because I'm going to burst if I don't, It's that, you feel that essential just undercurrent of just, like, they're literally going to burst if they don't put this out there. They're just
are you saying this felt like it was lacking from this film?
I'm saying I felt it was lacking from the 84 version.
Okay.
It was like, I didn't feel that burn. I didn't feel that essence of, like, we need to get this on the screen. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if I felt if it had been made a decade before, you might have had some of that, just that verve running through it.
Yeah. Like, it's like there's some.
Have I articulated that?
I think I'm feeling it. There's some directors like
for.
Their best work is under that slightly tighter budget. They had to make every penny work. And they had to just have a slightly shitter day on set.
Yep.
Whereas for 1984 Dune, you can tell that there's a lot of extra lazy footage lying around, and
the
hard work was in the editing suite, not during the production.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You've distilled that in a way that. Yeah, you've basically summed that up. Yeah, that's what I was going for. But I say things in a very long way.
No. You build the canvas and paint a rich picture. Like, I completely feel you.
Yeah.
So, sticking with this current film, in terms of like Villeneuve and what you're talking about, him not quite delivering on the emotional human level necessarily as much. I know you haven't gone full Nolan on your critique of him, but like,
no,
I would say that. Part of what I expected from this was those big wide shots, like I was saying, those big wide shapes. And then what he tends to do is he has those moments where there's a very visceral memory-like texture shot. It'll be a hand rubbing the sand.
Yeah.
It'll be in Arrival, it's like a lens flare of someone out of focus on the telephone.
Yeah.
It's those weird memory kind of things.
Yes, it's very...
I find he uses a lot of that, even in Sicario, when they're raiding like the gang drug den thing, but the camera just goes off and just tracks or dollies sideways past the door frame where stuff's happening towards the walls.
Right. But I never felt during Sicario that we were looking at things from a bird's eye view. Even though there might have been wide shots, I always felt like we were in that space
that script
with
gave
those,
us a POV
those
narrative,
people.
though, didn't it?
Yeah. Which is distinctly different from basically everything else he's made.
That's very interesting, because he worked really well under that constraint.
Yeah.
Like, it was really good.
I thought
The
Sicario
script
was
forced him to see
brilliant.
it through someone's eyes.
Really enjoyed that. Yep, absolutely.
So in this, like, there's all those big wide shots. There has to be to kind of like taking the width and breadth, because this isn't just like a kingdom that's moving. It's an entire planet's military force.
Yeah.
Is moving to an entire another planet.
Yes.
So you have to have lots of big shots for things, and you have to soak it in somehow. You can't just cut from, we're going to go, we're here, we're done.
Yeah.
You have to have all this kind of pomp, and you have to capture some of the ceremony.
For sure,
And so I was kind of expecting that. I was expecting with his big wide shots. I wasn't expecting too much to overcrowd my eye with all of the shots, because it's much more of a bare desert template that you're working against.
Yeah.
So I feel like he really dialed up some of the other things. Everything was just kind of moody, intrusive rumble noise.
Yeah.
Every time, like, you hear like a double bass string get kind of rubbed really near a microphone, he
Yeah.
gives a pound to charity or
Sure.
something like.
Well, it's Hans Zimmer doing the score in it.
Yeah, and it's what I kind of expected, and I feel you needed, because if you just had like anything a bit more traditional, the bleakness of what you're looking at is going to seep into your overall experience.
No, this is I feel like a harder push for emotional engagement would be wasted here.
Now, I feel that there was plenty, and I wonder if this is the book difference, because I've got some text on every single screen where a character's thinking something. It tells me in full what they're thinking.
Is it.
You may not be getting that.
The reason I asked about the context, like how did you discover this, is like I'm wondering what kind of emotional baggage are you bringing to this?
So
that I am not, because I'm just here to. I'm here to watch.
Yeah,
film.
I mean, I'm definitely coming in as a hard Dune fan, and definitely coming in as somebody who's been longing to see it made right.
Yes,
and it doesn't necessarily. I'm aware that there's a sci-fi series, and I don't want to go anywhere near it with a stick.
Right.
I'm aware the 84 captured the tone, but you can't fit that into one film. So I've wanted everything that we're going up to. I wanted to enjoy this experience. Other than saying, like, I'm a fan of the source material, though, I wouldn't say it's that emotional baggage that's probably made the biggest difference.
Okay.
It's just having read the text. Because I think that's given me a lot more backlog on each of the characters.
I tell you, this is not a spoiler, but one of my abiding thoughts coming out of this was, we talked about the 1984 one feeling very truncated. It felt like there was a lot left on the floor, as we were saying, right? It's like you can feel that they were clipping it. Given how unengaging emotionally I found this, I wondered what the padding was. Now, obviously, we've got a whole other film to go, hopefully.
Yeah, so here's that squeeze.
Yeah, but I'm going, I actually don't know if this warrants 2 parts.
And I will tell you, it absolutely does. Like,
okay.
I can tell you that on like a gut level. That's really weird.
Okay. Now, I can't justify that. I've only seen this one part, but that's how I felt, because I was so just detached from what was happening.
So I thought it was all there. Like, you've got, with the Duke especially, this over, and like most of his men, Furfear's aware of it, Gurney Halleck's aware of it. They're being played. They're on a losing hand. When Jessica's like obviously doing her best to maintain her composure, but she's in shreds because she doesn't know if her son's going to die on the other side of that door. She's almost clawing at herself. Do you know what I mean? Like really fucked up. She has to compose herself with all these different moments, and it's all the whole point that no one can ever lose control, because the moment you lose control, any character, everyone's fucked. Everyone's survival at this kind of level is constantly on a knife edge of observation and trying to like kind of work out what's going on. And so there's bits where the book makes a lot more of a deal of it because you get insight into Duke's direct thinking, where he's aware that the only way they're going to survive is by co-opting the Fremen, but also the smugglers. And he plans like escape routes for his wife and son, or he's trying to set this up because he knows the roll of the dice is stacked.
Yeah.
And so he's always aware that other people are interpreting stuff slightly better than he is, especially with Jessica.
Right.
So there's like a meal scene that happens in the books where with kind of Stilgar's meetings truncated into a quick heads up, hello, let's spit everywhere. There's a whole much more
Steady.
There's a larger I had to turn my phone off just to double check. There's a whole kind of larger sort of thing about the powers that are in Arakeen, which is the city where they've kind of set up base in, where you're getting a feel for what they've landed into and kind of what's going on, and it gives you an idea of stuff like Liet Kynes is at that meeting, and it gives you an idea of their interpower play, and Jessica's reading more into the power play of all the different people at the table than the Duke is. And Paul's almost a step behind his mother, kind of sensing that something's wrong. So there's a lot more kind of built into that. And again, the book's focusing on people's awareness of a situation. And that's what's really engaging to the backdrop of them taking over Arrakis.
Okay.
So every time you've got a few shots of a character walking along and Jessica looks upset before she does this, or Gaius Helen Morahim is just like, the Bene Gesserit have done what they can for you, and like Jessica looks really, really upset, and then you've got that shot of her and Paul both shadowed from each other, no longer working together. What you've got in the books to back that up is what she's saying is that the Duke is going to die, and that your entire household is going to get fucked. But you understand the crux of the kind of pseudo-religious history we've been putting for the last 400 years into the natives. You know that's where you need to go in order to have any chance of survival. And then, just a little bit on the whole Kwisatz Haderach thing.
Yeah.
But, like, there's kind of all this stuff in the characters, which when I come from the books and see that, I'm just like, yes, that is exactly that. But
interesting.
I've got that framework.
Yeah.
And so to me, I'm seeing an accurate representation of characters I already know, but you're not getting any of that material to know them by.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why I wanted to bring this up. It's like, it's not just your emotional attachment. How much does this experience, how much does reading the book and knowing that inform on what you're getting from this, which I might not get because I'm purely going into this as a film? Like
a lot. And the book has like the anti-Paul of the book, so to speak, is Fade Ralpha, where Paul is kind of galvanized in fire and he's lean and survived. Fade is it's Rocky. Paul is Rocky training in the snow in Rocky 4. The HD director's cut remaster coming out soon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank God they re-released that.
I know. I can't wait. Do you know there's going to be 40 minutes of new footage?
I can finally stop writing all those letters.
Now, if 30 minutes of those are credits, I'm going to be pissed.
There's one FX shot and 30 extra minutes of credits for that shot. Yeah.
And it's one extra punch.
Yeah, we digitally put Rocky's face on another dead actor for no reason, and then punched him.
Thank you for framing it, cinematically. Again.
So
I understand.
So Paul is Rocky training in the snow.
Yep.
Fade Ralpha, who is basically the share cousin to the Harkonnens, so he's related to.
Is Drago huffing the spice?
Yeah. He's getting injected, and he's in like a room somewhere with loads of Russians like analysing him.
Yeah.
So he's like that foil where they have that fight at the end.
Yeah.
Which is just obviously him, the Emperor. It's all kind of pushed back now. So you've got a few more things in the book that are letting you feel more of almost an adventurous time of it, which wasn't in the film. And obviously there's only so many people you can introduce us to if you're also having to introduce us to an entire universe, a feudal weird culture, talking about the Emperor's strength against the other houses, which is like a Landsrad. But then there's Chom, which is like the Combine, Honnet, Ober, Mercantiles, something, which is basically there's three powers: the Imperial power, all of the houses combined, and all of the houses in the Emperor have stock in the merchant guild of all the universe, so to speak, which is Chom.
Right.
And so that's what
I'm already lost.
Yeah, but basically it's that weird, horrible tripod of power that stops any one person truly fucking over and taking control of all the others. That's how we've kind of survived at a galactic scale. That's how
I get you.
So all of that is hinted at, but none of that is explained maybe enough to give you an idea of the richness. And because in the books you've got these extra characters which have all this extra stuff, you've got more of this fantasy adventure, whereas this has still been very stark. Now, obviously, the story for what's happening for the characters is stark and bleak. But this again feels like, hey, book fans, I've interpreted that, and here's what I'm showing of the characters doing that. And I'm sitting there going, yes, that does feel like them. That is what they're doing. This is film made for me. Thank you, Denis. Yes, really, really loud bass string rumbling with loads of foreboding. Yes, okay, great. But I can completely get how, like, that's not going to be for anyone else now.
Yeah, right.
You're going to come into that and just think, okay, well, Blade Runner 2049 also had maybe not characters you got behind massively, but I only needed to have watched one other film to have the context.
Right, yeah.
And I don't even necessarily need to have seen that film to appreciate this.
Yeah,
pretty
and would
strongly.
you believe I only had to wait 2 hours of a 3-hour film to get to that character that I knew, and to actually get any sort of, like, inkling of emotional investment. Yeah, 2 hours, you know. But even, do you remember that bit where they're in the casino, and this is where he meets Harrison Ford, and Frank Sinatra starts playing? Now that was a weird. Like,
you love that genie in a bottle, memory in a bottle. Thing.
Yeah. But it was just a buy-in to something emotive. It was not subtle at all. But it took me instantly into that time. You know, it took me back to something. It's almost like, sorry, this is spiraling, but the way I would frame it is like, okay, the original Blade Runner, you know, is incredible, and it's huge, and it's atmospheric, but it's you never feel the lack of human connection, because it's dank, it's grim, it's like it's people just.
I want to put an asterisk on that and say you never feel the lack of humans really existing in it.
Right, but
I tremble on the human connection in terms of what you get from Blade Runner, the film.
Okay, well that's interesting, because the way I want to frame it is basically, it's like there's always something tangible in it.
Yes,
put it that way.
Oh yeah,
right? Yeah. Okay, the score is incredibly at odds with that in a sense. Now it works, but it's very like otherworldly. It's not a huge, not a million miles away from the kind of dissonant strings, the kind of stuff that you're talking about. And then you get the love theme, which is that really jazzy saxophone bit. And it's like, there is your connection. It is like this one piece of score entirely standing out from the rest of it. And I think it's a lone saxophone, if I remember correctly. And here is something that requires...
Yeah, there's like some synth support, but it's like wah, wah, wah. It's all lamenting and echoing. Yeah,
but it requires breath to perform. It's not something you can play. It's something that requires your actual life essence to create a noise. And just at that moment, like, I'm pulled back in because of that. That's your tether. If you've been missing it through the whole film, there is your, like, really evocative, just like, oh, God, remember that we're people, and remember that we're all in this together. This is a journey. He doesn't have that typically for me, but he did have it in that one moment in Blade Runner 2049 when suddenly Frank Sinatra starts playing, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm pulled back in much the same way as that love theme by Vangelis pulls you back in the original Blade Runner. For me, this guy, Denis Villeneuve, has never really crafted that moment. I've never really felt the humanity in it, and I feel like here again, it was just missing.
I think I think I can kind of feel a couple of areas where that was notes he was given by a studio, which has affected a couple scenes in the film. But
Really?
then what you've got is the empty studio equivalent of that, and still not having met that. You know, what's the thing again? It's when you butcher a pig, you grind up its guts, and then you shape that into the shape of a pig again, and you're surprised it doesn't go oink. Where like there's a few bits in the movie where like I feel like they were
Never.
Yeah, I think it's usually said a bit better.
No, you put it very well. I mean, I still understood what you meant. Yeah,
but like I think in order to get into the crux of it, we're going to have to go into spoiler territory. And
okay, sure.
We might as well just work through the film.
I think we might as well. Yeah. Okay. So
overall, spoiler free. As somebody who's read the books, and was aware of the constraints of making a film these days, for a start, and having time to breathe over stuff, but who is already familiar with the characters going in.
Yeah.
I overall enjoyed this. I feel positive towards it. But there are a few caveats, certainly. But
okay.
I'm very glad that this has happened. I'm very glad it's gotten this far for me. Like, so positive about not just the film experience, but the fact that it's even made and where we are today.
And this is,
is weird.
I absolutely agree with you on that. I am very glad that this is made. I will unpack that later with a bit of context. But also, I must say that while I liked most of what was going on, I was never bored with it either, but I was never really yanked into that world and these people and what they were going through. I think,
and I found myself assessing the villeneuve of the movie too a bit more. The best story,
right? But the best way I can describe the experience of watching this film is like I was visiting an art gallery.
I wouldn't quite go that far, but we are looking down the same road.
Yeah, right. Okay. So let's just fire into spoiler territory.
Yeah. All right. Well,
so this is your cut-off point. Like, do not pass go.
Yeah. If you're a fan of Villeneuve movies in general, you will love this. If you're a fan of Dune, you will love this. If you're coming from no real kind of experience or context from either, you've got quite an experience there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to have to learn and chew over at the same time.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of fat on that meat to taste as you're trying to chew as much out of it as you can whilst you're experiencing it.
Yeah. But you know that the meat looks good.
Yeah.
Right? It's definitely appealing.
But is it going to sustain you?
Yeah. Are you going to be hungry an hour later? Yeah.
Okay, spoiler time.
Right.
Well, let's just kind of vibe in. I might just throw in the odd chirp if it's got anything to do with the books, but for the most part, like, again, I'm still just experiencing more as a Villeneuve film from the text more than finally they've made the book. How's the book kind of translated? Which wasn't how I expected it to be, but I've definitely bought into his cinematic style.
Yeah.
And then wanted that to be the style that they use to make Dune with, as opposed to, I really hope somebody makes Dune and does it justice, which is weird because it means I'm okay being a bit divorced from the text.
Well, I was going to say you'd have to divorce yourself from that to enjoy the Lynch version, which
yeah. So like I said, like that's got the atmosphere at least, if nothing else. But I just totally fell for it. But like my reasons for falling that and why I've not focused on it. Obviously, you've been sort of asking me to get really particular about it.
Yeah.
But like anything I have to say about that actually has nothing to do with a good understanding of the cinema experience.
Right.
It's just random me loving that sort of shit, which is why I've just redirected.
Fair enough. No, that's fine.
So we start in. We've got Paul and some of his dreams and prescient vision. We've got. Wait, at the very beginning, before the Legendary and the Warner Brothers logos, wasn't there some cryptic?
There was some cryptic quote about dreams, which actually, we hadn't even had the logo yet. And then when I realised that was not something, I thought that was the beginning of another advert or something, like a brief little thing.
Dreams can be flashes of what humans are capable of.
And I was waiting
to turn off your phone.
Right.
Just like, are we watching a film?
Do you remember what the actual quote was?
No, but it was a vaguely dreamy.
It was something to do with dreams, and I was like, your way to advertise a car or something like that. And then it came up the Warner Brothers, and that got a little chuckle out of me because it was just like, what?
Yeah, it's like something dreams and what you can do, or dreams are like a hint at what you might be capable of doing, or something.
Okay, just to be a little harsh here, would it be fair to say that the bookends for this film were not particularly strong then?
I'm gonna be harder on the end. Shall we just jump straight to the end?
Oh god! Oh yeah, you're doing a space. Yeah,
so,
just skip to the end.
We're in the spoiler time. So basically, it goes right up to the part of a prophet, just before the end of a prophet, where
Which
Paul
is
and Jessica.
a chapter in the book.
Yeah,
is that right?
yeah, it's like a big marking off. You got
Okay,
like a separate page in there and stuff.
Okay.
And where basically they've jumped in amongst. This will make contextual sense in a minute, but they've now just about officially joined for Fremen. They're still going to be judged over some stuff. They haven't met the full community, but they've joined Stilgar's band.
Yep.
Pretty much everybody else, as far as they're concerned, is dead. They're heading into the desert.
Right.
And this is one of those. So there's two kind of movie things, but in the books it does kind of hint at this. In the books they get glimpses of Fremen in the dust and in the sand. We're going to jump right back to the beginning bit as well.
Uh-huh.
Where they're just are those Fremen riding worms? Worms are not things humans interact with. Worms are death.
Yeah.
They're the guardians of the planet. They're the reason why spice is difficult.
Yeah.
So when he's just worms, desert power, yeah, that's all fine. And then, as you know, Kiani, who obviously is aware that this is part one to a 2-part movie, turns to camera almost.
She breaks she does a Deadpool. She breaks the fourth wall
with a wink and a smile.
Yep.
And she turns to camera and she points and clicks and she goes, "This is only the beginning." And there's Wild Stallion's guitar music just comes So obviously, basically, contextually, within the context of the film, they are marching towards the desert and the siege, and Paul goes, "Wow, desert power."
Yeah.
And Kiani, in that context, out of nowhere, just says, "This is only the beginning." As in, what, Kiani?
Right.
What conversation are you having in the context of the movie?
Yeah. Right.
That,
Yeah. The beginning of what?
Yeah. What?
Right. Is there something?
Are you telling me this is only the beginning of what Fremen can do with worms?
Right.
Are you telling me this is only the beginning of Fremen's capability in the desert?
Or was that just a little line that you threw in to say, "Oh, go on, please let me make a part two"?
Did the studio make Denis Villeneuve have to have Kiani have an end line to really rub home that you've only watched the first half?
See, I wonder if that was a studio mandate or if that was sort of his thing to push for a part two.
Oh, like when if you're taking prisoners on behalf of the Lord, so then you mutilate one of the prisoners so that the Lord can't send them back as hostage. So you tie yourself to him. Do you know how so talking about 5 different kingdoms, you'd take prisoners, and some of those prisoners might be lords, and you can ransom those prisoners back.
Right.
If you mutilate one of those prisoners, you may or may not be able to ransom them back. Mm-hmm. And so what you do is you tie that lord to your actions, because now that lord has to get rid of that prisoner or execute them.
Right. Okay.
And it further increases your bond to them.
Yeah.
So in that, Denis commits Warner Brother Pictures and Legendary.
No, you're green lighting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. I wonder whose decision was behind that. But when you've got that, and then you've got this, and I'm gonna be blunt here. It was pretentious as fuck, that fucking text line at the beginning. I don't remember exactly what the text line was, but even just to have that before the logo.
It was about dreams and prescience. It did link in. It linked in.
But did we need it? Given that it starts with a prescient dream,
so
did we need to be told, hey, by the way, dreams can be prescient?
In terms of a film-going experience, no. In terms of you talking about it being pretentious, it does kind of mirror something in the books where there's quite a lot of text about the good thing about Paul is that he knew that he could learn, and that was the first thing he was ever taught, that he could learn.
Oh, okay.
And therefore
so what you're saying is he's actually talking down to us as an audience. He's saying, no, you can learn too. Come on, open your eyes.
The point in the books is, this is why I refer to Dune as almost a self-help book. The point in the books is it metas you a little bit as a reader to make you see value and weight in everything that the characters experience,
right,
by bringing that topic up in the first place.
Okay.
Which is I don't know if that's a cheap parlor trick, but that's part of the amazing buy-in that I have for it. Because then you really you're searching for how the characters are acting in situations.
I'm just going to say Denis Villeneuve cannot pull off a cheap parlor trick. I'm going to say the bookends to this film are a little crusty.
Oh, yeah. The ending was for that to be the last line, this is only the
It
beginning.
did make me laugh, though.
That was a garbage move.
Yeah. That was a bullshit move.
Now I'm talking about a garbage move in a very lovely, stark, modern mansion with big open space.
Yeah.
But I've just caught a bit of a garbage around the back of the kitchens.
Yeah, you've just got to whiff it.
But the mansion tour is stunning.
Yes. No, it is gorgeous.
Do you know when really rich people have really, really large mansions and then they lack the sense of interior design with which to fill them?
Yes.
And so you get these micro spaces, or you get a library with no books.
Yeah.
And you get like a lounge area, and then just a lot of marble because they don't know what to do.
You're right. Yeah. It's
Kind of a bit like that.
almost like oh God, what was the comparison I was thinking of? Oh Jesus! No, do you know what? It's totally gone.
Whilst you're mulling it over, I'll jump back to the beginning of the film.
Please do. It was not. Was not important.
Yeah. Anyway, Keanu turning to camera and being like, "This is only part one. There's a big adventure to come.
Yeah.
Please make the second film. Please, you have to."
Yeah.
And
the series, the Benny Jesuit series.
Oh God, yeah. Do you know what? I think I'm less interested in that now. Like, I'm deeply interested in everything with Jessica.
Yeah.
So kind of going back, you start with Paul, and you've got Prescient Visions. You've got I don't want to go scene by scene.
No, not at all.
But the overall kind of effect is, you've got Caladan, you've got these big shots. Even the ships and the shots of these big shapes that are going through the screen.
No,
big bassy noises.
Yeah,
I liked all that. I was buying into all of that.
I do. I know the CV that he's had. This is what you expect from him, and by God, he delivers on that. And when I comparative, like say, it was like walking through an art gallery. I mean the emotional detachment, but I also mean you will stand there and stare at it and go, "Fucking hell, I want that on my wall." It was I've not seen a film in I get very down on modern filmmaking, as you know, especially since the move from film to digital. You cannot recreate a chemical process with numbers. You just can't do it. But that is one of the better looking films that I've seen in the modern age, in terms of like its cinematography, in terms of like it actually having any sort of texture, in terms of like just the use of light and shadow. And I was struck by it at several points. I went, that is really beautifully done. Yeah, and I felt the same about Blade Runner. But Roger Deakins, just an incredible cinematographer. You're going to get something that stands out from him.
So this wasn't Deakins, right?
Was it not?
Question mark. God, I was because Roger Deakins was attached to it for ages, and then I think he wasn't in the end.
I could have sworn he was, but I might be wrong. But I know he's done a few Villeneuve films, and they've always looked great. So whoever he got, if it wasn't him, whoever he got did a very, very, very good job.
Don't want to say Alan Sorkin, or is that a completely different person who works on a completely different part of film?
Alan Sorkin.
Alan Sorkin.
Alan.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
No,
Alan.
Alan.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
No idea. So,
but like when the Harkonnens are coming off of Arrakis, when it's just like you start off and it's basically Harkonnens are sucking Arrakis dry, they're horrible, and then they left. You're getting all of this from the Fremen. You're getting this from the Fremen. Have you seen the Beast Raban? You're getting this from the Fremen perspective. From Kiani, who's kind of losing raids to just fuck up their spice production. And then they're kind of having to slip away and disappear amongst the rocks. Mm-hmm. And then all the Harkonnens leave, and all their spaceships look like big, fat, bloated ticks.
Yes.
Like they're literally parasites on the planet.
Yeah.
So that shot was just like lovely and horrible and nasty. And it's like, that is what they're just... That's how they're viewed.
Do you know what I was thinking actually when that kicked off? And I'm thinking, we've seen an incredible amount of sci-fi cinema now, and it must be stupidly difficult to design something that doesn't make you think of something else.
Yeah.
And there was no point during this, but particularly when it kicked off, because I was waiting for something to be reminiscent of something else. It's like, no, nothing here looks like a fucking Star Destroyer. Nothing looks like an X-Wing. It's like nothing looks like anything that I could identify as something else.
Yeah.
Just dressed up.
Very solid.
So I was like, good, because the one thing that I don't need is to be taken out of this by thinking about someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I definitely give it points for that. Absolutely. And the way you described that, spot on. Yeah.
I liked all the big wide shots of a Calendad where all the Atreides are just lined up, and they're there for the kind of ceremonial part, and you've got all the kind of right hesitations. You've got Jessica looking at guys, Helen Mohim. You've got Paul being aware that there's something wrong with Jessica. You've got Leto doing what needs to be done for duty, but he's still looking back to his family the whole time. Sort of thing. It's all there if you've already read it.
Yeah. And it's all very much for show at that point.
I like the stuff with the old Duke. The old Duke died by bullfighting. The old Duke was a really cruel man, and like Jessica fell in love with a man who was willing to know that she was going to fall in love with him, but not marry her and keep her as a concubine.
Right.
And he grew to love her properly, but he knew what she was buying into, and that he was going to use a Bene Gesserit concubine for his position.
Yeah.
And that she kind of like helped soften him out of that a little bit. So he's no longer his like father's man. So when he's talking about, when he says to Paul like, my father says that duty is something that you're called to, I'm not sure if like he's still quoting his own dad or if the rest of the quote is just him separately saying, but should that not be for you, you'll still be my son.
Yeah,
like he's sort of saying, this is what my father said.
That's the most important thing you are to me.
But this is what I think coming a generation after that.
Yeah.
So I liked all of that stuff. You've got, how to put it, you have to... You're seeing the Mentats calculate stuff. You know that the bad guys are bad, but you're not quite getting the full gamut of how Peter de Vries is a fucked up Mentat, more of a broken toy that the Baron has. He's just, one of the guys who pops over to Lucius Secundus, and he's like, can I
just say, this was stupidly distracting. When we got introduced to the Baron, and he started speaking, and I went, is that Joss Ackland? The accent that the guy was putting on was very like Rufus, my old friend, like Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, Demetrius. That was him. And it was very
the guy with the LEDs in his neck.
Death to Bill and Ted. And I was like, no, he's dead, isn't he? And then. And then I realised that it was Stellan Skarsgård.
I caught at least 2/3 of his lines of dialogue.
Yeah, he was doing that sort of fucking Marlon Brando Apocalypse Now mumble, combined with that fat vampire from Blade.
They shine the torches on. Yeah,
I was like, okay, I get this. I'm on board. But it took me out of it for a minute when I thought it was somebody totally different.
Actually, so I got the crux of his scenes, if not necessarily all the words that came out of his mouth.
Do you know what? Just to skip forward a bit, the one bit with him that I really did enjoy, which made me feel. It was a slight bit of emotional engagement, but it made me feel ill. Is when the Duke is sort of lying like naked in the chair, and he's just really enjoying his dinner, whatever he's having, and it's
exquisite.
But it's really slurpy and juicy, and like the scene in Return of the King when Denethor sends Faramir off to fight to take back Osgiliath.
That horrible greasy meal.
Yeah. And he's making Pippin sing for him. All the while he's just right, it was like that, and I thought that I got a bit of
like you've not had, so that's the Atreides kitchen that he's eating from.
Yeah.
But you've not had any shots of the Atreides doing anything to excess, because they're constantly having to survive by the skin of their teeth and their wits and their loyalty. Right.
But you've never, to my memory, and correct me where I go wrong, you've never really seen them enjoying that kitchen. You've never really seen them enjoying what they do have, the little bit they do allow themselves.
Yeah, so that...
And this guy is just gluttoning all over it.
Yeah.
That was a real visceral, I felt that.
And there's like this is not a sort of parallel to that, is that they talk about the fact that, like in the books, that if they're going to survive there, they're going to have to actually learn to love it. They're going to have to learn to see the beauty in the planet and what's going on.
Yeah.
Whereas the Baron never has to do that because he's got all the wealth and the positions of power. He's got spice reserves to pay for the Sardaukar troops and stuff.
Yeah.
I loved the interpretation of the use of a voice. 10 out of 10 for that.
Okay.
So it's very... So they've got the whole film introduction scene where Paul's having breakfast with his mum, and they have to explain that they're going to a planet, they have to explain that they're in the future, they have to explain that there's special training that he's getting that other people aren't getting called a voice. And it was a little bit like, make me give it to you, the water. And it's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that was...
But when he does the voice, and it's just bass static, that super randomly is like a... Patrick Rufus' Name of the Wind is like a book series where it's got a really hard magic system. And like, if you learn the true name of something, you have power over it.
Right.
So it's almost like child fairy-like, but that's now introduced into a hard magic system. So if you truly know what the name of stone is, you can say stone and you can command it to do shit.
Right.
Except the word stone might be what you hear, but that's what the only thing your brain can come up with.
Right.
What you're actually, the noise coming out of your mouth is something that you can't even perceive.
Okay. Yep. I'm with you.
So when he uses a voice and you get just those bases, or when you have a voice used on him with Gaius Helen and you see it through his perspective, where he's not even aware that he's having like time skips where he's done what he's commanded. He's approached her, he's knelt before her, and you just get it as he's like cuts with all this audio interference.
Yeah.
I love that.
Right. Okay. I mean, that was... I was wondering, because obviously...
Sorry to interrupt you. Better when it was used sparingly in those shots than, give me the knife, cut the
Yeah. That was a little bit wearying, and I know exactly where you're coming from. That scene at the table was a slightly awkward exposition dump.
Yeah.
And the problem that I have with that is that it's between two people who already know what the story is. Exposition always requires somebody who is not in on it. And at that point, the only people who are not in on it are the audience. Now, that is always just a real sticking point for me. But it was very short. You know, we got what we needed and we got over it, and then on to something, you know, a bit more interesting. But it was just like, yep, there we go. That needed a little bit of...
And it's almost like we're prepped. So, like, I'm sending Duncan ahead because I believe there's lots of Fremen. I hoc this plan works. Duncan comes back. There's lots of Fremen. This plan looks like it's going to work.
Do you know what...
We don't need both halves of that conversation.
What the unfilmic nature of this... You know, you were saying this is not bred to be a typical movie.
And every chapter is precursored with a historical text based around what's going on as well.
Right. A little scene like that had a little bit of a problematic element to it is because we have no outsider in this particular universe. Everybody's in on what everybody else is doing. And so it's just like they are sharing the details here, but they already know the details. So like you don't have...
It only starts working when the Atreides hit Arrakis because the Atreides learn about spice production.
But you don't have a typical protagonist in this film, which makes it... And I guess that doesn't matter so much in the book, but it would definitely matter in a film adaptation.
The problem is like it's also so tropey. You have to come away from it.
Yeah.
And
I think, of course.
I don't know if this makes sense, but like in Harry Potter, you feel Harry's wonder at the world they're in, and you get caught up in that.
Yeah.
That is 100% not the route you can take for what Dune is.
Yes, yeah.
Because it's not magical, it's survival. It's not the person opens the door into the wide sweeping vistas and a couple of ornithopters go through and a worm in the background goes over a sand dune. It's not that. Like they're all surviving in this feudal state. So I guess like I'm assuming that was a conversation at a script stage where they're just like, we can't really do that for this universe.
The only way that could have possibly worked, and it would have meant that they'd had to split it into 3 films, if they had sheltered Paul from anything to do with that. And we started the film at the start of his journey into even beginning to get a sense of it.
So there's 2 stages here,
really
though.
Couldn't do that.
There's 2 stages and a problem that sits in between them. Stage 1 is how do we learn about the universe as it is? The universe that everyone knows about.
Yeah.
Stage 2 is how do we learn about Arrakis and spice production and the ship the Atreides learn about, which is a bit easier because they're learning as we do.
Yeah.
The other problem is Paul's becoming more presciently aware of stuff beyond either of those two things. And the only person who can really relate to that is Jessica because she's involved in that process.
Yeah.
So you
not
end up
something-
just watching a third-party character, Paul, suddenly jump ahead in knowledge with a few things. By the way, I know you're pregnant now.
Right.
And it can be difficult
Yeah,
to
all
get
that stuff
swept in that.
nobody else is privy to except who he's having the dream about. But it's necessary for us, and it's just a bit sticky, isn't it?
Like I don't know. I liked all the moments of gravitas where like Stilgar in their first meeting is just like, I recognise you, and there's all these little things. I like all the hand talk and the language that the battle language that the family has. I love the guttural, horrible languages that the other forces use from these different planets. But it's all giving me the iceberg of stuff that I know there's an iceberg about. Whereas you're getting these just disparate moments that are just interesting. And probably, hopefully, will build to something colourful.
Right, yeah.
But, we're running out of crayon in those pencils. And so, like, we've got all the lines in place, but are we filling it in enough?
Yeah. No, well put.
I like the stuff where, in Paul's prescient visions, Jamis is going to guide him, and he's like, I will teach you the ways of the desert. I will be the one that shows you what it's like here. And he does, but it's simply in that he forces Paul to kill, to survive.
Yes, that was a really nice tie in. You almost expect, I mean, not really knowing much about it.
Oh, here's my new BFF in the future.
That's it. He's going to be his Obi-Wan, right?
Yeah.
And then,
But it's more like an Assassin's Creed weird whispering communication thing when you stab someone at the end of a mission.
I've never played Assassin's Creed.
Oh, mate, it's super weird. Like, you'd go up to kill a boss, and then in the moment of you stabbing the boss, it would cut into, like, white mist, and you're still stabbing them. But in that moment, you and that character have, like, a full conversation where, like, all the restraints of being enemies disappears.
Oh, right.
And you just, like, speak to them, like, so you've shed my blood. Well, I've always thought this way, and your people are doing it. It's super weird. Super weird. You have these murder moments where you truly know them as you kill them.
Right. Okay. Ooh.
So, like,
the only way you truly know someone is to fight.
Yes, I must apologise.
Yeah.
Apologise for what? For me having to go back and turn the volume up to understand what you just said in that one bit on the Matrix Reloaded.
Apologise for even, being in this. Really.
Colin Chu jumped through a piece of plate glass as a stunt once on a Chinese television show, and he had to do an interview afterwards, but he cut his forehead and he just had this big bleeding line of blood down his face. It was the most awkward thing in the world. So awkward. I don't know why that's just come back out of my memory.
Always interview first. Always interview first.
He's a professional. He's a professional. Interview, then plate glass.
Right.
I just remember him answering an interviewer's question. It just came on camera. Anyway, so getting back to it, like, I loved that, like, whole, like, I'm going to be your teacher here.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was really good. Yeah.
So there's you don't get all of you have to read it on a character's face because you don't get it. You get all that in a monologue in the books. Jessica, very specifically, because she's always like careful. Whenever Paul's pushing his luck, whenever Paul tries to step into his dukedom, she's like, you measure this because we only get one shot at you winning people over.
Yeah.
So once like this kind of more feudal fight system is invoked, she knows that she can no longer interfere. So she's just kind of like staring at him like beleagueredly, just like, remember everything I've been teaching you up to this point, please, for the love of God.
Do you know, here's the thing, and I caught into this early on, and I was waiting to be, because obviously I don't want to second guess the film. But I figured that this was going to be the case early on, and then it ended up being the case by the end of the film. And maybe this will feature into the second one. But I came out of this going, okay, you tell me that spice is important. It's like, it's not just this like, I don't know, aphrodisiac. Or
yeah,
but it's for.
I don't think they gave you enough info on what spice is all about.
Well, my question was not really what's it for, because it was, It's like, okay, it's a hallucinogenic, but it also is like some kind of fuel, right? I'll get that at a very basic level. Where are you going? Where do you actually travel to?
Right.
You know, I mean, apart from the three planets where you guys are duking dicks.
Fascinating.
Right, dueling dicks, I should say.
So what you've not gotten out of it is the idea that the known galaxy is populated by feudal planets.
Yeah,
You've not had the Asimov bit where they've talked about the Empire.
One of my big things coming out, one of my big problems is, it felt very small. Even though the scale of it, in terms of what was on screen, was obvious, right? They packed a lot into it, and they, you know, as you say, the big, grand, sweeping shots. You've got
how
a lot
much
of
did
stuff.
You feel that? So, you know the bit where it's raining and people are marking themselves for the Sadokais, or them. How much did you feel that was a separate planet, separate to Gidi Prime? I'm just curious.
I didn't even know. I could only remember the three, and I couldn't even remember what Gidi Prime was. That was the Harkonnen.
Yeah. So we had Caladan where they started.
Yeah.
Gidi Prime's the Harkonnen homeworld.
Yeah.
We've got Arrakis because they're leaving, and Arrakis is the sandy one. Caladan's the wet one with the
gloves.
That
is a little bit George Lucas, that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna let that go for now.
Which did Dune come first?
Oh, Dune came before everything but Asimov, pretty much.
Okay.
That's your measure. Your rough guide is that.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So Star Wars is a little bit Dune. You know, you've got to have do you know what? That really used to... It sort of fucks me off and it sort of doesn't. Because at least... And I'm sorry, we're going off on a little tangent here. Comparative to the sequel trilogy, every planet at least has something distinguishing about it in the prequels and in the originals, right? Mm-hmm. You've got Tatooine's your desert planet, Hoth's your ice planet, Endor is your forest moon.
For what it's worth, Arrakis does have polar ice caps.
Does it really? Okay.
It does, and it has a temperate zone as well.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
You get maps.
Right, but the prequels, like, Coruscant is a planet that is just a city.
Ecumenopolis.
Right. In the sequel trilogy... But it sort of fucked me off because I'm going, yeah, but does every planet have to be just one thing? Mm-hmm. Like, why is this whole thing covering a planet? But then you get to the sequel trilogy and I'm going, there is nothing stand out about any of these locations. You're showing me absolutely nothing. I just wanted to get that off my chest while we were talking.
Part of the fantastical is taking something and taking it further. So take the bit of you're going to remember most about the planet and make that the whole extreme.
Right, yeah.
Like, whatever we do, our generation will only be remembered by the lowest common denominator in the end. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like that.
Yeah. But that was like, yeah, you've got your sand planet, you've got your rain planet, and then you've got, I don't even know what stood out about Caladan, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think so. Like, you don't necessarily visit many other planets. Well, you do in the books, but like, it's the later books that really flesh out how weird some of the others are and how over specialized. Mm-hmm. But there's conversations in the books that aren't happening. There'll be a comment like, "This is machine that was crafted on Ix, another planet." When we talk about Chom and the other planets that like have this contract of marketing with each other.
Yeah.
Trade, I should say, merchants. That's just stuff that lets you know there's other planets. Yeah. But what we've not had in this film is anyone saying, other than this planet, and this planet, there's shitloads more.
Right, yeah. There's no sense of the scale of the wider universe. There is a sense of scale in terms of what they're showing you, because everything looks grand. But there's nothing to say, you know, like within...
They've never said the Bene Gesserit all get trained on a certain planet.
Right. I want to say within the first like 10, 15 minutes, and this is, again, you know, the comment that you made about it not being a very easy movie. In the first 10, 15 minutes of Star Wars, you know what's at stake. You know, you get the sense of the galactic conflict. You get, you know, a big planet shot. You get the small rebel fighter going up against the fucking huge Star Destroyer. So you get a sense of the odds, right? And all of that is visual storytelling within the first 10, 15 minutes. And you know that they're talking... And they only need one mention of the Galactic Empire. And you go, it's a whole fucking galaxy. This could go on and on and on. There's never, in this, any sense of what the wider scope is.
Yeah, some talk of the Emperor. There's no Senate that gets liquidated in the background. Nothing.
No little pods with ET in it.
Yeah, like there's
Thank fuck for that.
Yeah, Christ on a stick. I'm not even... But there's like so I noticed like Paul was studying on a projector and stuff, but it's all the studies of where they're going. It's all focusing on what is happening. So, I mean, that could be as simple as a couple lines of dialogue, just thrown in with two separate conversations and separate characters.
But it wasn't intimate. It was insular. It was reductive to me. Again, coming from it purely from a cinematic standpoint. As I say, I got no context for the book or anything.
Well, in terms of the need for just something, even dialogue that explains a wider galaxy, that's not like, right next to intimate moments of following a character.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Okay, but one's not bouncing off the other.
Yeah, for sure.
That's interesting, because there's all sorts of shit that happens later that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
But so far you've got, this is the planet they're on, there's an emperor somewhere. Salutis Secundus is where the emperor has an army, which we briefly see the Harkonnens pick up a few legions from. We've got how nice Caladan was before they left it, as like a bit of contrast and compare.
Yeah.
And we've got DD Prime being a bit grim-looking question mark.
I did at
really
least,
into ball chicks.
I did at least get a certain sense of they do feel bad about leaving home. I got a certain sense of, like, we don't see a hell of a lot of Caladan before they're off, but
duties, the vibe of that.
There was a little bit of, God, I'm gonna miss this place, and you got I got enough to sort of, okay, I believe you. I don't feel it, but I believe you.
Paul thinks this is a big adventure sort of thing. Yeah. And they're just like, we are going into extreme danger here.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Visually, by the way, Timothée Chalamet, I think that is how you pronounce his name.
If you like.
Well, it's how I pronounce it.
I just call him Babe.
Yeah, we don't have that kind of relationship yet.
Well, you can borrow my poster whenever you want.
Have you wiped it down yet?
Sorry. Can I mate, there's a hole in that thing bigger than the end of Shawshank Redemption. That might be the best thing I've said all day.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, I'm sorry, listeners. I'm really sorry about that. Him, from his look, kept reminding me of Cal MacLachlan.
Yeah,
actually, there was a very sort of
he's big on that furrowed brow life.
Yeah, and the hair and the sort of the pasty sort of look to him. The very sort of
he was deep on that emo vibe when he was going up and around the cliffs.
But also, I want to say slightly feminine looking.
Yes,
like so. How would this guy be the fucking? Ubermensch.
This is it. Like he's small for his age in the books, and he's got a dancer's physique.
Yeah.
So it's all about training your muscles to be as stringy and tough as tendons.
Right.
He's the wild hare, not the plump rabbit.
Right. This is it. But you don't even get and I'm not going to get too deep into this because you know where these thoughts lead. Tom Holland. I don't want to. I don't want to overstretch this, but he. When you see his physique, looks like you would still pack a punch, even though he's got a much slighter frame. You feel like you could deliver something. Whereas the way the looks of those two, like Cal MacLachlan and Timothée Chalamet, for this character, they look like a wet tissue. Do you know what I mean? It's like you could. It wouldn't take much to just like go through them, basically. And that is obviously...
I know where you're coming from, yeah.
Yeah, and it's obviously purposeful to a certain extent, because then you discover that he's got a lot of resources.
And he's going to... He's, on the cusp of having to rebrand himself and get reborn.
But he just looked a bit ill. He just always looked slightly clammy,
Yeah, yeah, but like, so I don't even know if... So something I said in the trailers is like there's a shot of him when he's with Gaius Helen. He's got another furrowed brow and he looks like he's looking inward and he's struggling over a new thought or a concept that he's not really had to sink his teeth into, which is his expression for a lot of it.
You have that same expression.
When I edit. Yeah. I've been told repeatedly.
I was thinking just talking to me, to be honest.
Just listening. Do I tell him now that I've not seen this film or do I wait? But like, so I was saying, he's constantly dealing with. He's aware that his sense of awareness is shifting, and he's aware that he's been trained in a very special way to be sensitive to that.
Yeah.
Which they dive into more in the books. He's even like mentat trained to a certain degree, or preemptively taught to think in a certain way.
Right.
Which is not necessarily helpful when you're younger, but sets you up to be amazing when you're older, sort of thing. You know, we've taught the kid a few languages,
a bit like chickenpox.
So now they're behind on all of it. Oh my god! We had two completely different approaches to that analogy. Absolutely. So, like, I'm teaching my daughter French, whereas you've given your son chickenpox. That's how we're both planning for the future. Yeah. Okay. Great.
But which of us is going to come out on top there? Which one is the most safeguard in the future?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's deeply insightful.
It's 50-50.
So I kind of wondered if that was vaguely what they're going for. Like, he's constantly trouble.
I've got no doubt that it was purposeful. Absolutely, but it was just. It was one of those things, again, that just kept me slightly at a distance, you know?
This was a bit more like buy-in into him taking on the Duke's role sort of thing. You're having a bit of trouble seeing the end of Journey where he's the daddy figure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So where did we get up to?
I mean, we kind of scattered all over the place, but we vaguely got to them sort of learning about spice production a bit.
Right, yeah.
Obviously, he's reacting to the spice a lot. It's all... Like, how to put it? Like, there's such a kind of rambling series of things that happen, which, when you're in the cinema, are delivered nicely as experiences. But when you're kind of sitting down afterwards, it's very hard to kind of wrap it all together and cogently talk about it. Like, I liked that it was delivered with a lot of string sound effects, experience, sand, cosmic moments, a little bit of a father doing this, a little bit of a character saying that.
Okay, let me pitch a little something at you. Is it difficult to frame it in terms of, like, going through it bit by bit? Because nothing really stood out?
No, I still have plenty that stands out, but I'm caught between, like, I'm almost trying to go step by step through the film.
See, there's
nothing to hold on to go narratively for it.
No, well, that's what I mean. There was nothing particularly, to my memory, and I know certain things happened, but and maybe it was the lack of emotional engagement, but there was nothing narratively that felt propulsive, and there was nothing for me to hold on to as a moment when, oh my god, that bit really, rattled me. You've
got a big moving in movie followed by a big running movie, and those are your two stages of the whole experience.
Yeah, and so there's nothing you can't go.
Yeah, not absolute bang out scenes. There's stuff that I loved. I loved all the visuals of the explosives, how they kind of flew and arced and split off, and then
that was beautiful. Yeah,
I liked the laser beam that was cutting through shit.
Yeah, that was
as being super thin and blue, but like hyper dangerous.
Right? Yeah, like really powerful.
I liked Paul just having that moment where he realizes riding the storm, he just shuts off the wings of the copter, and then it looks like one of those little. What's that tree that, like, when it drops the seeds, it's got like one leaf that's like a little propeller. So when the seed drop, it spins around.
They call them. I used to call them like whirligigs.
Yeah.
So, like, but I don't know what the actual name is. No,
but I like that when he does that. Visually, he just whirligigs. He's like, don't fight this and try to survive this. The storm will spit us out when it's ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those were all really cool. So you've got all these moments where he's like, he knows when to not fight stuff versus fighting it. You can see that he's like, even when his fight with Jamis, he's trying to get Jamis to yield, and he keeps going like a death blow, but he doesn't deliver it.
Yeah,
because he's still caught in the old ways, and in the desert, you're not going to survive with the old ways. So I like,
and you're not going to make them bend to your ways. Either.
Yeah, like these people aren't worried or care about your honor. They have their own complete system, and what you're doing isn't meeting any of that right now.
Right, but they are so entrenched in their set way of doing things that you're never going to turn them around.
No.
You might
And so the Fremen have a culture, but the Fremen's day-to-day culture is to act like a military unit. They're literally like a pre-made army, so to speak.
And it's purely about survival as well. It's like, what can you offer me that is more valuable than the water in your flesh?
Yeah.
But you
can tell they don't have a lot of spare calories to play around with, like in their day-to-day survival.
But that was a great that one line. I was like, yep, I absolutely get where you guys are now. You know, that was a lovely little framing thing.
It's kind of all over the place with a lot of like the moments and feelings. Like the Fremen have the coffee service, but they become aware of the Sardaukar, and they jump them, but they're always on the losing foot regardless.
Yeah.
And so that's always just, here's a Sardaukar. Then we see the shadow. We see the Fremen being aware of the shadow. We go up to the Sardaukar. We watch that shot where they just like elevate down, and it's just like such a weird, awesome visual. Just seeing them drop in so much open space, you see nothing.
Yeah,
just a guy floating until the floor comes nothing. In.
Yeah, they're like I don't know if they cut the sound out of that or whether they just like really dialed it.
They're like the Emperor's finest, but like you can hear them shuffling around feet wise once the floor comes into view.
Yeah.
And then the Fremen are already buried and all that sort of stuff. So I like that, but it's almost like that dream-like sequence where sand dust goes up in the air.
Yeah.
You hear like noises and effects, but you don't necessarily hear screams and grunts and breathing. It's ching ching and so yeah, it's all there. But it's all there for the book reader. It's all there for the Dune fan.
Yeah.
A few other bits were a little bit too filmy. Just Duncan's chat with Paul in general. When they first meet,
I agree with that. Actually, there was
a bit trailer baity. Oh, by the way, excuse me, Paul. Learn to read a fucking room. Oh, I had a prescient dream. Oh, great, my friend Paul. I'm just working on this and living my day-to-day life. I dreamed of your death. Great, Paul. Thanks. What do you want me to do with that? What do you want me to do with that? I'm clearly busy. Like, go back to your dad or something. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, they haven't even sat down. He's literally landed the ship, and he's been out of it for like 5 minutes. I dreamt of your death, Duncan. Do you know what? This is why we don't invite you to all the stuff. Paul. These 4 weeks of me living with a Fremen, this is a holiday I negotiated from your dad, okay? Do you know how much I need this?
You're always saying that, man. You're always saying I got a bad feeling about this drop. You know, it's along those lines. That was that little exchange though, where he started, calling him young lad and giving him a bit of a you put on muscle. No, it's just kidding. That was out of a different movie.
Yeah.
But this is another point I wanted to make about his films. They are, and I hate saying this, but they're humorless.
Yeah.
I would have to say. Now,
maybe like so Sicario has Brolin, and that's kind of down to Brolin delivering some Brolin lines.
Right. Again, I separate Sicario from the rest of the stuff because
Arrival has Renner because of Renner.
Because
like,
he will turn up.
No, but like he's
the only one that turned up.
But he brought the levity to those lines. The film didn't.
But I don't think. And as I say, humor is a very difficult thing. I'm not saying that I wanted this to be fun, because it's not going down that route.
But I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly what nobody coming from Dune wants this to be. Right. Nobody wants this to be fun.
No, but I
want it to be the Dune experience.
Yeah, but
that's not a fun experience.
I wanted it to just have a little bit of honest levity in there. Like, why do these people fucking care about each other?
Yeah, can we just get like a moment of Leto and Jessica just as a couple?
Right. Yeah.
Except Leto as a character is actually full of lament about never marrying Jessica, but still having a son by her.
Right.
Like, but nobody's truly open with even their fucking loved ones.
But is he operating like 24/7 lament? Does he? Is it like, the alarm goes off? Oh, it's time to lament. And then he's lamenting all day until nap time.
Kind of like the best he can do is just tell his son he's proud, but like. Yeah, like he's either lamenting or he's angry because he's aware he's not fully understanding stuff.
No, that might make a lot of sense for this film, but it's a very common thing through his films that there isn't that There isn't just that moment of, I don't know,
And 2049 managed
the way
to do
people are.
just from dead shot looks off of... wait, who's the guy from Blade Runner 2049?
Which one?
The one with no
lead,
emotions.
The lead guy.
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Like, Ryan Gosling can be in a funny situation.
Yeah.
And because he's such a blank slate face...
Yeah.
Like, that's... You put the emotion in there because you're aware of the situation being humorous.
Yeah.
And then you read it into him.
But he wasn't allowed to do that in that film, really.
But in 2049, he still bought just enough of it, I feel. He was the brightest, warmest, happiest spark in that.
I'm just waiting for a moment in one of his films, apart from Sicario, where people relate to each other as people. And I've just never felt it. You know, it's just missing.
Oh yeah, I was just about to bring up another Sicario.
Hey!
I was just about to bring up another Sicario example, even though you literally said, apart from Sicario. Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you.
You took massive, knife
umbrage,
edge.
big umbrage, and then I was like, oh no, that thing you just said.
Yeah. Okay, you remembered that we're having a conversation.
Yeah, this is how it works. I have to listen to the stuff before I'm offended.
You see, stop going, and actually just tune in for a minute.
So, I mean, other than that, I don't really want to just go through step by step for the rest of the Dune movie, because I think the real takeaway is the impression, because it's such a big sprawling thing, and it's not a complete narrative. So the real takeaway is the impressions that we've got from it, which we've kind of covered, quite a lot.
What I will say is, the best bit for me, the most evocative, engaged that I got with it, was the chase, the worm, towards the end. Because now I thought the movie throughout looked great, but I have not seen for a long time that sense of fucking Turkish delight desert setting, that sunset, those dunes, that real duskiness in the air. That I could feel it.
I noticed.
I was like, yep.
I noticed they came away. How to put it? They looked like they were aware of not to go too deep into the whole Lawrence of Arabian red sunsets.
Yeah, no, we don't go there because you can't really. Again, as I say, you can't recreate.
But they do well to find much to look at.
Yeah,
for a desert.
And I haven't seen something like that in a long time. And then the actual chase, the way he framed the chase, was they were running towards us.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know, something in the framing of that made me buy into the intensity of that moment a bit more. We weren't viewing them from up here.
It's the good old foreshortening. You can see them and you can see what's chasing them. Right. And you don't know that distance, but you're pretty sure it's getting smaller.
Yeah, but you also don't know, how far they've got to run, because we're not seeing behind them. And I was like, okay, now you've got me. Just for that little scene, I was really bought into it.
I think the bit for me then that had my attention the most is when Jessica talks to the housekeeper, and she's like, okay, I'm going to select this housekeeper, and then she's just like, she's already aware of the historical implication of that person's name, and she's like, you speak my tongue, and she's like, I know a lot of things. I know you're hiding a knife. And the guard's already going, but she's using the house torch. And she's like, wait. And then she's like, prepare for violence. And while she's having a conversation. And that's the shit. That that, in terms of a moment in the film, that one scene was the best encapsulation of everything in the books. Because you've got a scene where there's two conversations happening on top of each other.
Yeah.
Jessica's talking to the guard while she's using her training and knowledge to understand the motivations of a woman in front of her, and understand if she's a threat or not.
Right.
And she's both manipulating the woman as she's talking to her, whilst still proactively being in danger and having to set the vibe for the guard in her feudal family secret hand talk. That one scene had it the most Dune-ness out of everything so far.
Do you see, we've come from the same perspectives again. We've come from, I was looking at something, looking for a cinematic drawing, and you're looking for what encapsulates something from the book. What have I come for? And you picked that moment, and I picked something that is just cinematically that it drew me in. That was something very engaging.
What in this film is filmically good for me.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And I'm just like, what in this film captures what I already expect to see.
Right. So we've come back to our same perspectives. Yeah.
So again, 11 out of 10 if you're a Dune fan. Even more. No, not that high.
And like minus 11 out of 10 if you're a cinema fan.
Yeah. Basically, Villeneuve, A or B, take it or leave it. Like, nah, not so much. No. These are lies, obviously. I enjoyed the experience. It really was a number of experiences, as opposed to, like I say, that big thread that we really get tangled in.
Yeah. We've not been able to go through this bit by bit. It's just been...
That is what's happening for them, though. The family doesn't want to go there, so now they have to suddenly be on the back foot and go there.
Yeah.
They don't want to be there, but now they've got to learn to live there. They don't want to die, so now they have to run away.
Right.
So you're constantly going through a series of...
He doesn't want to kill the desert guy, but it's the only way to get accepted into
there's no breathing room to really do stuff.
No.
I did like the fact that, and obviously I'm sure this is going to play into the next movie. This is a real rub-in for the fans. But the mouse that's hopping around when you get that shot where it's called Muad'Dib.
Oh, right.
It's called so in the film, like that big hand shadow in the moon. He's like what do you want your secret name to be? He's like, can I be? What do you call that hand shadow? He's like, we call that one Muad'Dib or something like that. And you're just like, oh,
yeah.
But in the books, Muad'Dib is the name of that little mouse.
Sorry, go on. I'll let you finish that.
I was just going to say, and so like it's smart because it avoids danger and it gathers water and it's careful, and so that's like a wise animal, that little rat thing.
Yeah.
So after the death of his family, he's literally reborn out of the desert. He comes out of the hole, scrambles out. That's the first thing he sees, and that becomes like his kind of name motif later on.
Yeah.
So I was like, there we go. There's cinema things happening there. He's reborn out of the sand. He's ready to go.
I was just thinking about that bit in the 84 film that tickles you up.
When, really good pacing.
No, it's like, can I be...
Perfect script writing. It's like you may have he's like I will call you Usul, which is the strength of the base of the pillar. This will be your Fremen name or your siege name that we will call you. But you may choose your man name to be called outside of our siege. What is the mouth shadow of the second moon? We call that one Muad'Dib. Can I be Paul Muad'Dib? You are Paul Muad'Dib. Yeah. It's just like, wow. That is like robot scripting.
Took him 3 days to write that exchange.
But to be fair, like that whole thing in the 84 is all part of the same scene where he has that fight and kills Jamis, which didn't make it into the film.
No, exactly.
So I'm sure there was a bit more breathing room originally.
No. Do you feel satisfied by this?
Do you know when you've put a load of money into a Kickstarter because you love the concept and you want it to succeed?
No.
Okay. Imagine you put a load of money into a Kickstarter. You love the concept. Not a load of money. You put some money. 30 quid. You put some money into a Kickstarter. Okay. You love the idea. You want it to succeed. You're really into it.
Yeah.
A year and a half later, you're still really into it and you're glad that the people doing it are doing it. But you've kind of grown a little bit past it. You're walking into something else now.
Mm-hmm.
You're glad to keep an eye on it. You're glad that the product's come out. You're glad the Kickstarter is a success.
Yeah.
You're not emotionally involved in the well-being of the Kickstarter.
Right.
You just want to see it succeed.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I know that feeling. Can't really buy into that analogy, but I do know the feeling that you're trying to sum up. Yeah. Is that...
I'm really glad. I really enjoyed the cinema experience. I wanted Denis Villeneuve. I'm glad that they're doing this, and I'm happy it's there. Blade Runner 2049 was a film experience that sucked me in and made me watch it again.
Yeah.
This I'm coming away from really glad that it exists just the way it does.
I'm glad you framed it like that, because I wanted to come back to this. Although I have issues with the film, I'm very glad that it exists. And the reason I'm glad that it exists is because we don't get this kind of film anymore. Do you remember? Now, I don't know if you remember this, because aggressive, violent opinion, it was kind of overshadowed by Mother, right? When we witnessed that fucking...
we watched that woman punch her boyfriend.
Right, it's just like...
We watched two films in a classy place.
Fucking dare you! Don't ever. You never get to pick anything again. You prick. You know, it was really violent. I witnessed, and I don't know if because I went to see it twice. Maybe you weren't with me.
You watched Mother twice?
No.
Oh.
I watched Blade Runner 2049 twice.
Yeah, my second time was solo.
That's right. But I can't remember if this happened when we went together, or it happened when I went the second time without you. And similarly, The Last Jedi. Those 3 films came out in the same year, and I witnessed hostile, negative reaction to each of them.
Really?
And taking aside Mother, we'll stick with Blade Runner and The Last Jedi. And I thought, what's the commonality here? And it's like, oh, I know. It's because it's not fucking Transformers. You're not getting spoon-fed, like, you're not getting a spoonful of sugar with your medicine, right? You're not getting the easy just buying shit. You're not getting just big things smashing each other. You're actually having to think, and you're angry that you have to think about it.
And that's not of a detriment of big things smashing into each other. Because when you say that,
because
you
I've always got
the
time
Marvel
for that.
template these days.
Right. I've always got time for that, yeah. But audiences, modern cinema audiences, are not bred to expect something like this.
No, there's one type of what a film is now, and you're either a good film that does it, or you've not made a good film.
And it's fucking incredible that you got to make this, actually, because Blade Runner bombed.
It didn't bomb, but it absolutely wasn't considered a financial success.
Against what it cost, it was a bomb. Critically, it did incredibly well. They loved it. People were raving about it, but nobody went to see it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And what I'm hoping is,
Blade Runner 2049 minutes running time was a joke, I think.
That's good, yeah. No, I've not heard that one before.
I've heard that one flying around.
Yeah, I like that. But what I'm hoping is, obviously the structure of it is very different post-COVID, because this is getting released on HBO Max at the same time that it's out in cinemas in America.
Oh. We're talking about Dune?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not really the one thing that is really going to help this get to a second film is the fact that it is not completely dependent on box office takings. They are looking at it from a different vantage point now. And I think they've basically, it's not like 100%, but it is 90% there that, the second film is going to happen. And I'm glad. I'm really glad that it exists. I will...
So I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear anything that increases the likelihood of this being wrapped up properly.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I've got no snobberations about how you should experience stuff. I've got personal opinions that this film should be seen at a cinema.
Oh, I definitely...
But, I don't have a template of how people should be experiencing anything in general.
And we should probably just say we went to the IMAX. Our local... my local, your 100-mile trek is an IMAX, and it's 2D because you don't get 3D anymore.
Good.
It's not been
good. Like, the only 2 times that worked were Avengers Infinity War and
Avengers Endgame.
Do you know, that might actually be it.
It might actually be it. No, but we used to go to the IMAX because I wanted to see it in IMAX, but you have to put up with the 3D. I can't remember the last time they put a 3D film out, to be honest.
I'm glad to hear that.
And so I think this does deserve to be seen on the biggest screen possible and the biggest sound,
I would reinforce the bigger sound part, to be fair. There's a lot of big, blocky, super bassy noises of things happening.
Yeah.
That are really important. And again, because sometimes those visuals can leave you needing more to that experience
for sure. For sure. But I'm just glad that I can't believe that he's actually getting the opportunity to do this, but I'm really glad it is. And part of the reason that I'm glad that it is happening is because it will piss people off. And you know what? They deserve to be pissed off. And,
people who proactively just get those visual reactions.
Right, exactly.
You deserve what you get.
Exactly. But overall, it's difficult to ask you if you were satisfied with this. Obviously, aside from the explanation you've just given,
I think
given that it doesn't have a finale, it doesn't have an ending. Whereas the benefit of the structure of Infinity War, even though it was essentially part 1 of 2,
it still wraps up.
It wrapped up.
Yeah.
And that was a really critical thing to its success, I think. But this is, as we discussed that last line, This is very much part one of two.
Yeah, so I'd say like the buy-ins for me have been the character moments, with Jessica's hand talk, the nature of danger. It's her, Duke Leto, and Paul basically more than anything.
Yeah.
A lot of the other stuff was great, but I didn't have that like connection to it.
Mm-hmm.
And they end on an awful line. This is only the beginning. Glad that there's more. I'm not chomping at a bit to see it right now. Like I'm happy to digest for a couple of years and then see what part 2 is.
Right. Okay. So you're not coming out of this going, I really want to see that again.
I really do want to watch parts of this again to chew on it. Yeah. I don't necessarily want to watch the entire film again.
You wouldn't necessarily make,
So like again, like I loved it, but yeah, I don't have that Blade Runner 2049 reaction. No. I came out of Blade Runner just basically saying I'm pretty sure that's the best film I've seen all year. It might be the best film, but I've seen in quite a few years.
Yeah.
I'm going to be watching that again within the next few days.
Yeah.
This is much more of a, I'm glad it's fair and I'm glad I've experienced it. I need to get on with my life.
Yeah. And it must be sort of nice to, like, it'll be there for when you want to go back to it. So you maybe don't feel that sense of urgency.
It's like I don't have to remember it anymore. I don't have to remember something important because I've written it down. Do you know, now it exists on a format.
But can you remember where you wrote it down?
At the cinema. Anyway, don't worry.
But you, presumably, assuming everything goes well, you'll be down for part 2.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where I am with it. But I would expect to be, yeah.
Yeah, on the back of that.
Simply because I wouldn't have enjoyed, without the base of a cinemoness, it would have been a lesser experience.
For sure.
Which isn't something I would say for a lot of films.
No, absolutely. So, I guess, are you glad that you made the effort to go out and see it?
Oh, no.
Where you saw it?
Yeah, no, that's undoubtedly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to seeing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad I've seen it.
Okay, that's good. I mean, I think for me, as just to sort of sum it up then, because I guess we're kind of done, really, right? Yeah. I'll just say, despite the lack of, and this is weird to say, because I go to the cinema for emotion. I mean, you and I have very...
Quick interjection.
Yeah.
We've been really rambly today.
We've
been all over the place. We're mostly just going by feelings from the film producer's point of view and stuff.
Yep.
Do you think that's been a result of not having because even on James Bond we rambled fucking ages, but we had a really clear narrative structure that we followed with really clear character shit going on, bright as day.
Yeah.
And we talked through it, whereas this film and Villeneuve's filmmaking approach has been feelings, emotions, big sound effects.
That's it.
Scenes that are almost kind of dreamlike in terms of how they're presented, even though they're very visceral.
That's it.
And that's kind of all we kind of got overall. And that's kind of
there were no great cinematic markers, I guess. There was nothing, you don't have those very... The way that I would describe visually... I thought of this when I was thinking about Arrival. I'm glad you've come back to this, actually. It's like looking through slightly opaque glass, where you get a sense of what's on the other side, but you don't feel it. And that is the way I look at his stuff. When
the relatives were around to visit, but you were kind of sleepy at the time. You mostly heard it through your bedroom wall.
I had a Coke bottle up there. I pissed in that instead.
God.
I didn't even have to go to the bathroom.
No, but I know what you mean about that. That's slightly removed experience.
Yeah, though. And if I think along the lines of what you were saying, there was nothing. It's not divided by scenes. It all just seemed to just be one long thing. Even though there were obviously propulsive narrative points, there are points where stuff happened. But I don't think any of it stood out to me cinematically in order to be able to make that divide to go, oh, and what about this bit? It was just a long 2.5 hour sort of sensation of sitting through something without having those very clear markers for me. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Do you think if it wasn't adhering to a book, if it was a script that was more flexible, you would have expected something a bit more standoutish? A couple a couple peaks to the whole experience for you, remember?
Not from him, honestly. Even if it wasn't an adaptation, if it was something that he had done, just as an original thing. I would not have gone in expecting that from him.
Okay.
As I say, there's only one standout point in 2049 that I come back to, and it's that one moment where I actually felt something, and I just don't. You and I. That's what I was going to say, actually. Yeah, even though there's a very slight age difference between us, but you and I feel like our cinema heritage is informed by a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Knowing that, having that as my foundation and having that as my reason to keep going, a lot of what draws me to the cinema is emotion. And it informs my choices. It informs a lot of what I go back to, what I repeat watch, and it informs, what am I going to give a chance to? Now, I gave this a chance because, it was obviously a big thing for you. I was like, oh yeah, well, let's go together, obviously. But I haven't come out of this really feeling anything. It is sort of the antithesis of why I go. And yet, despite that complete disconnect, I would absolutely recommend that you go and see this. And I would absolutely say that it is stunning in places. It will absolutely, blow you away in terms of purely visual sensibilities.
Again, just to kind of agree with that, the stuff I love now compared to being a bit younger I love characters in conflict with themselves. I love the emotion. I love that stuff. That's not what we've come to see. We've come to see an experience. Yeah. Not an emotive
that's
character
it,
thing.
exactly.
An experience.
Yeah. But I've still, I've had to do it objectively, but I've still come out going, I appreciate what you're doing. Even though I've not come away feeling it. But I still look at it from a distance and go, kind of like the way I feel about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, actually. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, to me, is an incredibly boring film. I hate sitting through it. I really do. And yet, academically...
And that was Denis Villeneuve.
Sorry. Maybe you'll do that next. Maybe you'll just actually carve up his actors, and then he can be removed from the burden of actually having to cast people.
Oh wow!
And he can just
have ambient shapes.
Yeah.
Does he maybe he just wants to be like an electronic music producer? Like he's just going to get into videos of that.
Man, he needed to be born in a different decade.
Yeah.
No, Texas Chainsaw Massacre to me is an incredibly boring film. I never get caught into it. But academically, I can look at that film and go, that structure is fucking immaculate. The sound design is immaculate. The way it convinces you to think that it is more violent than it actually is, just by the use of sound. Everything in that is designed to work.
Okay.
But it doesn't work for me. And I guess that's my take on Villeneuve. In a sense, it's like, yeah, I can see that, but I'm just not feeling it. And I hope that makes some sort of sense.
Yeah. Like, we're going to a fine dining restaurant. We're not going to get pub grub.
No. But if it was a choice,
fucking love pub grub.
I'd take a pub grub. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, that's it. That's our rambling thoughts. I'm very sorry that this was long and it was a very directionless ramble. But again, we've just discussed why that might even be. That's all part of the response to the film. Indeed. So thank you very much for listening in. And make sure that you do actually watch this.
Yeah, and please, get in the comments. Let us know what you thought. Do you agree with us, or are we talking shit?
God, for people who've made it this far, thank you so much.
The people who've made it this far, and the people who actually bother to go and see Dune, which I hope you all do now.
Yeah, at least on HBO, whatever gives them enough money to make the other one.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for listening in. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.